And we are live. Welcome, everyone. If you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 15 minutes and we're getting started. In the meantime, this is the pre-show where I figure out if I've really checked all of the things I'm supposed to check. Now, the quick answer to that, by the way, is no, I have not. I'll forget something. There will be a thing somewhere in there. First, let's change the website so it shows that we are indeed live. It's that little bar at the top that says my study group is today. How about my study group is right now? Click here to join us and point to /live, which is where you should be if you're watching this, is professormesser.com/live. Let's reset the cookie so that it pops up on people's browsers and save the changes. And now it says my live security plus study groups right now. And it's set to stop. You can't see this, we're over my shoulder, but it's set to automatically turn off at 2 o'clock. So it goes away. So that makes things easy on my side. Okay, that is set. I've already set up the Twitter and the Facebook, and the emails will go out. So that's good. Hello, chat room. Let's, whoops. That is not what I wanted to do. That was not the key press I wanted to make. Oh, and that's why I did it. It's hard to talk and do this all at the same time. Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you are watching this over on YouTube, I do have a chat room that I look at throughout the event. So if you have questions or there's things you want to know more about, and maybe in the after show, you can do that as well. You can have a look at those things. Let's see if I can get my keynote going. It's already up there at the top of my iPad screen. What else do we need to have ready to go today? I think that pretty much covers it. Things are rolling here. I see people are joining the live stream. We've got a presentation. Is this on the network? I think it is. Let's see if it is. Yes, it is. There's that device. And play it. That's all good. Let's do a check of cameras. There's camera 1. Hello, camera 1. Am I in the center? I'm sort of in the center. It's kind of centered. It's centered enough. That's the important part. Camera 2, camera 3, camera 4, camera 3 with me. Hi. Camera 4 with me. Hello. So it all works. Hey, we could do Skype while we're thinking about it. There's something we can do. Let's go to Skype and call the Skype test number. Oh, it's really loud. Turn it down.
Hello, welcome to Skype call testing service. After the beep, please record a message. Afterwards, your message will be played back to you.
Hello, Skype call testing service. This is the Professor Messer live stream. We want to see if you're able to hear me when I'm talking into this thing and have it come back to me. Hello, Skype call testing service. All right, sounds good. So the mic works, the Skype works, the chat works. Cold in Colorado. Ugh. Let's see, what is the temperature here? Temperature, it's 75 degrees Fahrenheit. We're getting up to 81 today. So it's kind of cold here too. It's kind of the way it works. And I spent the weekend in Orlando, so it was really quite warm. But here we are back in the other parts of Florida doing this. Let's see. Those things are good. Let's change views on the screen here. Let's make sure things are working there. Yep. It's all good. Let's see if I can adjust my microphone to make this a little bit less annoying to everybody. Probably not. I have already remembered my vocal zone, so we should be able to get through the next couple of hours. I have a warm beverage, which is also good. I need to dust in here. to do this every so often. Noticing it needs a little bit of work. I need a better dusting vacuum cleaner. So it's good to know these things, isn't it? It's the little things I have to think about. Not part of your day necessarily. Okay. This is good. Chat room seems to be up and running. Hello, hello, hello. 53, Steve. Come on. Is it already no longer the fall? Is it already winter? I guess maybe that could be considered fall up in the north still. But you're not in the pool. That's kind of the idea. All right. What else do I have? Socrative is live. So if you wanted to go to Socrative, you could do that. What is Socrative, you ask? Well, glad you asked. We have a few minutes before we go live. Socrative is this. So you go to Socrative.com, go to the room name Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser, Professor Messer. And then there's also apps. There's got to be an app. You can put an app on your phone, on your Chrome browser. There's a extension or a plugin, I guess they call that. Or you can just pop open a new window and follow along, because I'm going to have questions for you that look like this, and you will be able to answer those questions if you go to Socrative. Now, if you go to Socrative and nothing's going on, then you're in the wrong room. So click back and go to the proper room name, which is Professor Messer. So there you go. And that's that thing. How are we doing on time? We got 7 minutes. 7 minutes before the thing with the stuff. For those of you joining. Well, Socrative, I called their phone number, so that's how I know how to say it. Or I found it in a YouTube video, something like that. Whenever I don't know the name of something or it's vague, I have to go find it. And it is indeed Socrative. Okay. We are doing it today. Let's go back to my welcome page. What else do we need to get ready? We need to get that ready. Are all the buttons pushed at this point? Are there any more buttons I could push? There's a couple here. There's a couple buttons. So I need to work on that. Don't tempt me about getting on Twitch, because that could happen. I've already been looking at hardware that I can just plug in HDMI so that I get zero lag, that 1-2 millisecond lag, and get rid of the lag and output directly to the SDI, which is what I use on my video side to switch this. And then I'll turn on the TriCaster, hit a button, and we're streaming. It would be so easy. That just seems like a little too much, though. I should be doing other things with my time. That would suck up some serious hours. An entire weekend would go by, and I would stream 24/7 on Twitch. And for what? At the end of the day, I don't know that many people would be that interested in following me to see how badly I play Diablo or Halo or Destiny or World of Warcraft, or pick one of those. It's one of those things. Da-da. Ba, ba, ba. I think maybe this should be the focus. It's where the focus usually is. There's this challenge with people wanting food and clothing and shelter. Always comes back to that. It's so annoying. They always want that. Give me food. I need a place to sleep. I need some clothing. Yes, you should see me playing Call of Duty. It is I spawn, die. I wait the 5 seconds, spawn, die. Wait the 5-second spawn. Run, 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 die. It's outstanding. You kids with your, what do they call them? Reflexes. Right. They want, oh, my teeth are crooked. I need to go to college. It's always something, isn't it? 2 minutes, 1 minute and 40 seconds anyway. We'll get this party started. I see the tweets have gone out kind of late. No, they went out right on time. They went out right on time. I've got more like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. I guess that is the lesson. Is just not have responsibilities. If you don't have responsibilities, sure, you can do whatever you'd like. But ultimately, you sort of need food and clothing and shelter, don't you? I mean, sort of. You need an internet connection and an Xbox and a computer to do all that on. I think we're coming up on the end of a season with Diablo. And then there's so many other things I would like to do. I've sent my kids off to play Fallout 4 so that I don't have to. So I get the stories of Fallout 4 at the dinner table. And that way I'm not sucked into it too badly. I'm going to put that pregnant pause in there. Yeah, there's a bunch of things happening with all the equipment. It's takes a while to kind of get. It's like playing a musical instrument. You kind of get muscle memory after a while. What's over here? Then you have to remember, of course. Is it position 7? Is it position 4? Is it position 1? Just can't remember all of that. No, you can play it at 4 or 1. What? We do. We sit around the kitchen table and talk about, I downloaded and installed Witcher, and here's what we're doing, and here's how it works, and it's so much better than Skyrim, and it's so much worse than Skyrim, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a smattering of different things going on at the dinner table. It's lately it's been a smattering of Witcher and a smattering of Fallout 4. It's and another couple in there. I think there's an update coming for what's the space one? Dang. It's the one that they just I was going to load up on my Mac and run it. I can't remember off the top of my head. Okay. Well, it's minute to go. Minute to go. Elite Dangerous. Is that it? Elite Dangerous. I think that's it. I won't play it. So I'm trying not to get in there. Focus. There's a lot of 900 series videos that are in production right now. So I have a ton of stuff that's in the can, as they say right now, ready to be edited. And I've got a lot of things I got to sit in front of the camera and shoot. So there's a lot of things happening along those lines. Let's prepare. Let us prepare for a study group, shall we? We'll go live in 30. There's a lot of good stuff today. We'll see how this study group goes with these questions. I think we got some good ones here for you. So this should be good. We will see. All right. And with that, let us commence. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2015 Security Plus Study Group from Professor Messer. I'm James Messer. I'll be your host for this hour or so, usually closer to 2 hours, of Security Plus content, your questions, and anything else you'd like to talk about. We'll spend the first hour really going through Security Plus, though. I'll give you some questions. You'll be able to answer them online, and we'll see how everyone does. If you are watching this live, you'll be able to participate and answer questions and also be able to chat in the chat room. So if you don't see a chat room, maybe you're on YouTube watching this on YouTube Live, you can flip over to professormesser.com/live, and you'll be able to put things in the chat room where we spent most of the preceding part of the show talking about Skyrim and Fallout 4 and Diablo and other games. We always have some type of topic in there. Oh, and food, clothing, and shelter. That type of thing always seems to blend together, doesn't it? Today, though, we're going to focus on Security Plus. There is a lot to work through for the Security Plus certification. First, let me tell you about what you can find Security Plus resources on Professor Messer website. Of course, there is my offline course that you can see at professormesser.com/GetSecPlus. Don't forget that I have my Twitter account, my YouTube account. You can always subscribe or follow us there at professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube/ you type something in, you'll get me, /Instagram/Facebook/anything. You can find me pretty well that way. Also, don't forget you can get 10% off of your CompTIA vouchers by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. Always nice to save a little bit of money before you take your exam. For those of you that don't know about my certification course, of course, all of my videos are available to watch absolutely free online. You can go online and the entire course is there, not part of the course, not a subset, not a number of minutes into each video. Every single bit of video from every single one of my videos is available for you to watch online. But I understand some of you don't have a good internet connection, or maybe you'd like to have this available when you're offline. Maybe you'd like MP3 versions of it to put on your mobile device. Well, I have that available for you in my Security Plus offline version. This downloadable course not only provides the video, but also has audio MP3, and I put my course notes in there as well. We'll talk about the course notes later on in the study group. There's a lot of you can find out about that at professormesser.com/GetSecPlus. Get SECPLUS. Now, I mentioned you'll be able to answer questions today. So here's the important part of how you can do that. Obviously, you have to be live to be able to do this. If you're watching this on the replay, you won't be able to do this. But those of you that are here can, of course, go to Socrative.com. Pop open a new window, go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to the room called Professor Messer. You'll have to type this in, PROFESSORMESSER, all one word, and you'll be able to find that room and answer the question that is already waiting for you there. There's also individual apps for your mobile device. Whether you're on a Windows phone or Android or iOS device, you can download the Socrative student app and also participate that way. There is quite a bit in there. In fact, you'll see once you get there, there's a question waiting for you about how long have you been studying for your Security Plus certification. Is it less than 3 months? Is it 3 to 6 months? Is it 6 to 9 months? Is it 9 months to a year? Is it over a year? Or you already have your Security Plus certification? So you'll be able to answer. You can see even these dials are moving as people are answering them on the screen. It's kind of nice to be able to interactively participate that way. Now, I don't know exactly what you're answering. I don't keep track of those things. So this is something you can just jump in there and try this out yourself. Don't answer in the chat room. That really won't help you out very much. You have to answer online. Go to Socrative.com and you'll be able to answer this. Go to the student room. In fact, I have a little button for you. Here you go. Go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and you'll be able to go to the room named Professor Messer. This is quite a bit. In the chat room, Evan's asking if I ever update my materials or add additional materials. Well, this is certainly an addition to those materials. I think that counts as an addition. But my videos very closely follow the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not downloaded those objectives, make sure you do so immediately. You should use these objectives as your master checklist. Once you check off everything that's in these objectives, you'll be ready to take your exam. And if you know everything in the objectives, you will pass your Security Plus exam. These objectives, if they ever change, I will absolutely update my videos to make those changes that CompTIA did to their certification. They don't tend to do that, though. They tend to release the objectives, and that's the objectives that they keep for about 3 years. This latest set of objectives was released in April of 2014. So these are relatively new. We're not expecting any change to the Security Plus certification for at least 3 years after that, 14, 15, 16, 17. So in 2017 sometime, you should see an update to the SY0 that will probably be like the 501 or something of that sort to be able to work with those. And so don't worry about wondering if my content is up to date, it's absolutely up to date. And if anything ever changes, I change my videos very quickly. Just doesn't happen very often, thankfully. Usually they put it on there and there is actually a version number on the exam objective. So if you ever wanted to see the one you downloaded today versus the one you downloaded yesterday, is there any change? There's a version number at the bottom. So you'll be able to know that. That's how I keep track of it too. This is a single exam that you have to take. It's 90 minutes in length, or you get 90 minutes. Hopefully it'll be less than that for you. There are a maximum of 90 questions. You could be asked fewer than 90 questions on the Security Plus exam, and you have to get a 750 on a scale of 100 to 900. It's kind of weird, isn't it? It's not a percentage because we believe every question is worth a different number of points. So you can't really determine if there's a certain number you should be shooting for. It's really a little bit different than that, being able to work through those pieces. There are both multiple choice questions and there are performance-based questions. Those are questions that are different than the multiple choice. They could be matching. They could be fill in the blank. They could be asking you to put things in order from highest to lowest. So you're never quite sure exactly what might be asked of you, but it's the same content. Nothing changes as far as content on the exam. So as long as you know the pieces that are important, this is the one where whenever you get into the wondering if you're ready for this, that's how you really know. So if you think you are ready, go through the exam objectives and figure it out. You'll absolutely know and be able to tell if you're ready to take the exam. So it doesn't matter how they ask the question. Don't worry about whether it's a multiple choice. If you know the content, then you'll be able to answer the question regardless of how it's asked of you. So to me, that's the important part, is that you're able to remember and keep that in mind. Let's have a look at some questions then. Let's jump into this and see how we do with actually going out and doing Security Plus questions. So I've got one for you. We'll jump into this. And I'm going to change it in Socrative so you can see this pretty quickly. And let's put the slide up here. The question I have for you is, which of these would be commonly filtered by a WAF? A WAF. What would be commonly filtered by a WAF? Kind of have to know what a WAF is, I guess, to be able to do that. Let's have a look at what the options might be then. I have a few for you. This one is a multiple choice. Would the options be, see if I can make this a little bit larger for you. That would be the wrong one that we're seeing here. This certainly is useful. Would WAF help you filter network-based viruses? Would it be commonly filtering SQL injections? Would it be commonly filtering malware? Or would a WAF commonly be filtering a URL category? If you think you know the answer to this question, go through and see if you can answer. Go to Socrative.com to the student login and go to the room name Professor Messer. Make sure you type it in right. PROFESSORMESSER, all one word. I should really make that a shorter name, shouldn't I? I keep saying that. I keep saying we're going to make it shorter. It never really happens. We should come up with just something that's a little bit off the wall that we can all remember. So maybe you know what the answer is. Is it network-based viruses, SQL injection, malware, or URL category? One of the things I like to do on these questions, by the way, is make this a couple of steps long. So you first have to know what a WAF is. And then secondly, once you know what that is, you have to now know what does it do. So I'm kind of having you think through the process of going down 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps to finally get to what the answer might be. So really you have to start at the beginning. If you don't know what a WAF is, none of this is going to make any sense as far as the question is concerned. So let's see how we did with this one. We have a lot of people stop Googling. No Googling. I can feel you doing that. And of course, we're all over the place. We don't really know what a WAF is. We don't know what it does. My goal with these questions is to get maybe half of you answering the right answer with this one. This is an increasingly common device these days. And you will see this, I think, primarily increasingly common because it is something that is required on the payment card industry's DSS, their security system, their security standards, to be able to do it. This stands for Web Application Firewall. It's kind of a bit of a misnomer. It's sort of a firewall. It's not what you think of traditionally as a firewall. A traditional firewall, in our minds anyway, should take you back 15 or 20 years to filtering things by port number. These days, modern firewalls filter by many, many different things, but a web application firewall is very different in its operation than those traditional firewalls you might run into. It's not really focusing on port number. It's not really focusing on a lot of the lower level networking content because you still need a real firewall. I say a real firewall, a traditional firewall, a network firewall, or these days a next generation firewall, an application aware firewall, for instance. But in this case, a web application firewall is there to protect the application that's running. So this is really from the user's perspective of what they're seeing. You're able to program or develop code within your web application firewall to allow or deny traffic based on what people are typing into things like a web form. There's a good example of what a WAF might be. So the web form, you may be asked to put in an address or a social security number or a zip code. The web application firewall is looking at this and determining, is this person really putting in a proper zip code? And if you are not putting in something that is a proper zip code, it may not allow that traffic to go through. It's effectively protecting you against things that might be an application level attack, like a SQL injection. So somebody's trying to use that SQL query in the field that normally would be used for zip code. It's going to block that information, identify it as a potential SQL injection, and disallow that. It's not really like Windows Defender. It's not really like IP tables at all. It's a completely different animal. It does not operate at that network level of doing things. And it's kind of difficult to call it Windows Defender because Windows Defender is for applications running in memory and you're looking for antivirus. This is looking for network-based attacks. In this case, application-based attacks. Yeah, think of it as this protects you against bad programmers. That's really what a WAF is. The programmers don't like me saying that, but as someone who does this quite a bit and does some application development, this protects me as an application developer. What if I forgot to do some type of input checking on the zip code field? I forgot. I didn't put the code into the software. I put it on the web, and it could potentially allow someone to get into the SQL database by using a SQL injection. Well, by having a WAF in place and programming it and setting it up in the proper ways, it will prevent that from happening. So it does help, especially on older types. But it doesn't have to be SQL injections. It could be buffer overflows. It could be someone trying to take advantage of a known vulnerability with an application. Think of it as sort of a higher level intrusion prevention device. Think of it like that. You still need a traditional firewall along with your WAF. In fact, the PCI DSS does specify that you need both of those things. You need a real firewall. I say real, this goes back to my background in firewalls, but you need that traditional network-based firewall, and you need another real firewall, the web application firewall. It's one of those things where you have to really focus on two potentially different kinds of things. So if we look at how we did with this question, the 47% of you that said URL category, traditionally you filter URL category with a URL filter. And these days, that's even built into the traditional next generation firewalls. Malware, that's one thing that you could filter, but it's not done in a web application firewall. And network-based viruses are traditionally also done through a network-based virus prevention or intrusion prevention system or next generation firewall. But SQL injection is a good example of what might be filtered by a WAF. But obviously, a WAF can filter many other things, not just SQL injections. It can filter many kinds of application attacks. This is just one example of the types of things that it can filter. So when you think WAF, make sure you understand the A part, the application part, because that's going to be critical on your exam and understanding what a WAF can do and how you should recognize its capabilities. So the 24% of you did that one and got that one right. So maybe that one was a little tricky to start with. So let's do another one, shall we? Let's jump in the middle of this. The question I have for you, I'm going to move my head out of the way so you can see this. I can see it on my side. You've been asked to transfer a file between your organization and a third-party company. Which of these would not be used for a secure file transfer? Would it be SCP? Would it be SFTP? Would it be FTP? Would it be FTPS? Would it be HTTP? So one of these would not be used for a secure file transfer, and now we need to determine which one of these that would be. And notice I also say on here, pick two. That's an important piece of this. So you have to be able to pick out of this two different options in here and being able to work with that. So make sure you step through those pieces to be able to break those down for you. There's quite a bit on this particular one that we need to go through, but make sure that you're answering it in Socrative and not in the chat room. And no Googling those terms. You should not go through and Google SCP, SFTP, FTP, FTPS, and HTTP, although it just sounds like a lot of letters, isn't it? So go to Socrative.com. That's where you should answer and figure that piece out. Go there and have him break those pieces down and see how you do with understanding what you might want to do when transferring files. This may even be asked of you as an administrator. There was even some talk of this. I was reading a couple of Reddit threads this morning that talked about router and switch administration and being able to transfer router and switch configurations from the device to your workstation. How would you do that? Well, that's a good example of how you would set this up and how you would be able to do that. Very useful to have this capability too, because then you know when you're transferring a file, it's really protected, and especially important if it's going outside of your organization. It's going to a third-party company. So you want to be sure that whatever you're doing is not going to get into somebody's eyeballs so that they can see what's inside of that piece. So let's go through this piece and see what we can do with them. I'm going to break down some of these pieces and see how we did with this. Let's go have a look. So here we are. We got a number of you have answered a number of different things in here and being able to work through it. So let's see how we did. And moving to your hot site probably isn't the right answer with this one, although the chat room comes up with the great answers, I think. If we really looked at the big winners here, 42% said FTP, 43% said HTTP. I would suspect this is almost exactly the same people. But then we have others that have said in the single digits SCP, SFTP, FTPS. Now remember, and this is an important consideration, especially on these particular types of questions, is that you're asked for a couple of things here. One is that which of these would not be used for a secure file transfer. So you're really looking for the opposite here. You need to make sure you recognize there is a not in this particular word. And the other piece is pick two. So you have to come up with two of these. Now on the exam, it's probably going to prompt you, if you don't put in two options there, it's going to prompt you that, yes, you need to make sure you pick another one. And usually it changes from a radio button, which is a pick one kind of view on the screen, to a checkbox. So you have a visual cue that perhaps something is a little off with this. Well, let's talk about encrypted file transfers and some of the things we can have here. One way to send an encrypted file transfer is through FTPS. That stands for FTP over SSL or FTP SSL. This is where we're simply using exactly the same protocol that you would use to protect and encrypt your web communication. You're simply transferring files over that exact same method. So this is a little different. The words will get you that SFTP is not the same thing as FTPS. So you do have to make that differentiation. And it kind of gets you a little bit because FTPS, you can think of that as the same as HTTPS. So we put that S on the end and it's a similar type scenario. There's also a way of sending information encrypted over SCP. It stands for secure copy. This is using SSH, which of course is a very encrypted method of doing terminal configurations. That becomes a little handy to be able to work with. SCP is pretty basic in the way that it operates though, and it may not exactly be the best way to transfer information between different sites. And there's SFTP. So the SFTP is SSH again, being able to use this and using real FTP where you can create a directory, you can rename files. You got really full file system functionality, which SCP does not allow you to do. In fact, there's some really nice capabilities there. So you can really choose if you're going to be doing this and need full featured capabilities, it's going to be FTPS or SFTP. And it just depends on different ways that you can be working with it. So those are the three best ways to encrypt files and send them over a link. And if we look at the answers that we really chose, SCP is certainly one of those methods, SFTP is certainly one of those methods, and FTPS is certainly one of those methods, which leaves us with the non-encrypted in the clear file transfer method of FTP. There's also in the clear, non-encrypted HTTP, which you could send transfer files over. You can absolutely do that, but it's in the clear. So you don't want to use FTP and you don't want to use HTTP. Those would not be used for secure file transfer, and those would be the two you should pick. You guys did a great job at choosing both of those, practically 100%. When you combine those, you're very close to everyone getting that one absolutely right. Well done with those answers. Yeah, you guys are doing great with these questions. Let's do another question around security and how we would look at securing things. This one's specifically around it's kind of an attack type. Because the attack type that we want to discuss is session hijacking. We want to know how we can effectively prevent session hijacking. There's got to be a good way to do this, right? Otherwise, it would be happening quite a bit. So let's see how we did with this. I've got a few answers, potential answers with this. Don't answer in the chat room again. Let's have a look at these. You have full disk encryption. Could you effectively prevent session hijacking through VPN connections? Could you effectively prevent it by clearing the browser cache before and after your browser sessions? Would you prevent it by visiting known good websites? Or would you prevent it by using strong passwords? It's got to be one of these, right? I've given you these 5 options. One of these would really be the best way and really the only way to prevent session hijacking in this case. I didn't even ask you for the best one because there really is a clear answer for this one. If you think you know what the answer is, go off to Socrative.com and you can try to figure this out yourself. Go to the student login and go to Room Professor Messer. This is going to be a little harder to Google, so you're going to have to guess. Pretend you're in the exam, you're taking the exam, you don't have a Google, you don't have anything you can do. You can go ahead and absolutely click through those things and try to figure out which one of these would really be the best one to go with. Try figuring those pieces out to prevent the session hijacking. This is one where whenever I start breaking through and trying to find out what are ways to really think this through, this would be a good way to do it. So really think through what session hijacking is. So you should have a good solid view of that. Again, it's a 2-step process with my questions at least. Now that you know what session hijacking is, you should know about the ways to prevent it. It's probably one of the most important parts of understanding what it is. You run into this quite a bit in being able to work through these. And no hints and no answering in the chat room, please. We're going to let everybody figure this out on their own. So let's see how we did with this one. We got a few of that have answered and gone through these pieces. So let's see how we answered. Well, 62%, if we had to pick a leader, 61% said VPN connections. The next highest would be 19% that said clear the browser cache before and after browser sessions. And then 8% as tied for third, visiting known good websites and using strong passwords. There's a good example. And then you've also got a last one there that is the full disk encryption. Only 5% chose the full disk encryption with this one and being able to work through it. So is it really, though, VPN connections? Of course, the first question we asked today, the people that answered the largest number didn't actually get that one right. Are we in another one of these situations where we're not exactly sure what the answer might be? Well, first, let's talk about this idea of session hijacking. What is this? This is where you would be somewhere. You could be at your desk. You could be at a coffee shop. You could be talking to a web server. And very often when you're communicating to web servers, especially those that are associated with PHP and other methodologies, they use something called a session ID to be able to understand who you are. This is because you're logging in with a username and password, ideally. And the session ID is one that's now, once you log in and you're assigned the session ID, it now knows who you are when you communicate back to that server so that you don't always have to keep providing authentication details every time you talk to a web server. It's because web servers don't have this perpetual connection. You connect to a web server, you get your information, and the relationship is over. There's nothing after that happens. There's no ongoing, prolonged communication. So you usually will get a web page and then you're done. The only way the web server is going to recognize you then is if you check back in with this very special session ID. Well, that's an opportunity for the bad guys, of course, because now bad guys, if they can get a hold of that session ID, They can grab this through a number of different methods. If this is something going over the network, maybe they grab the network information. If they have a way to pull this information off of your computer, they have a piece of malware, they may be able to do that. It's very common to do it off the network, however. So the attacker uses the same session ID to go into this device, and when they do that, they now have exactly the same access that you do because the web server thinks that it's you. Very common to do this, yes, with sniffers and ways to capture information from a wireless network. It's common to do this in coffee shops, for example. This became a very big problem for a number of different companies. There was a well-known session attack application for things like Facebook. So you could sit in a coffee shop, have it sniff the air automatically, grab the packets it needed, and now you're able to access someone's Facebook account just by sitting in the same room as them. So that's a little bit of an issue. One way to prevent this, obviously, then, would be to encrypt the information end to end. Even if they capture the packets, they would be encrypted. So you really would not be able to pull the session information out of that. That's why if you go to Facebook and other companies, a lot of what they've done now is set everything to be HTTPS by default. You just don't even have a choice anymore. That's the way you communicate to that particular service. Very useful for that. There's obviously some load that you're going to put on the server because encryption has a little bit of additional overhead associated with it. So that's one of those you have to worry about for those pieces. The Firefox extension HTTPS Everywhere is useful. There's another one, Force TLS, and another of other things that you can find to automatically send you to these sites with HTTPS enabled all the time. And I imagine there's some other extensions and plugins you can get for other browsers as well. There's probably one for Chrome as well, I would expect. Chat room asking about those. Or one way to do this is if you aren't using this HTTPS to the server, maybe instead you encrypt it another way. Using VPN technologies, for instance, is a good way where everything you send out of your computer is encrypted all the way until it hits a trusted device. So everything in between is completely blocked on there. So it becomes useful to be able to work through those pieces too. And of course, you've got ways to monitor these with other applications. There are some applications that have specifically been built for identifying session IDs and when they might be used by other people. Black Sheep is a good example of that. I don't even think you can download Black Sheep anymore. You probably can, of course, because this is the internet. It's not one that's generally available. And these days, not really useful because everything to Facebook is really encrypted by default. So let's see how we did with this one. The key, obviously, to prevent session hijacking is going to be really encryption. That's really your key piece. And for the things that I provided to you, VPN connections and the way that it encrypts is clearly the 63% of you understand that that is the correct answer. Now, clearing the browser cache before and after browser sessions isn't going to help you because this session ID is created when you first authenticate to the web server or provide some type of credentials to the web server or connect to the web server, and it provides that information back to you. So it's all real time, and whoever's going to grab that session ID is going to grab it when you get it. So you really can't clear caches before and after because everything takes place immediately in the moment. It's not like they're going to go into your cache somewhere and pull out your session ID. They can simply grab it off the network. There is visiting known good websites isn't going to help you either because this is all about the bad guys getting this information behind the scenes. Using strong passwords has nothing to do with connecting and preventing session hijacking. You could have a very strong password and be able to log in and authenticate to a web server, but as soon as you authenticate, the session ID is sent back. So you could have the strongest possible password in the world, and you're not going to still have a problem. People will still be able to grab your session ID. That does not prevent you from somehow getting around the ability of someone to sniff that session ID information. And full disk encryption, that doesn't help you either because the information is stored encrypted on your disk. The things still have to go across the network, and that's where the bad guys are getting those session IDs, being able to work through those pieces of it. So VPN connections in this case would be absolutely correct. And yes, there are a number of really good ways to grab information from the air, and probably one of the most popular is Wireshark, most certainly. There are, and I talk about Wireshark, of course, in my Security Plus course, or especially the one where I'm talking about packet capturing and analysis, a very popular solution. So there's so much, as you can tell, just the first 3 questions we've gone through have a lot of information on them. The Security Plus exam is remarkably broad. It discusses everything from networks to protocols to design to risk management to encryption to security to tools to mechanisms, all kinds of different options in there. So if you're in the process of studying for your Security Plus, you may want to take all of the things that are on every single one of my certification videos and write everything down yourself. And you can certainly do that. Go through all 200 and something videos that I've got out there and just write everything down. Or you could maybe look at my course notes where I've already done that for you. The course notes that are available are, I've taken every word from my Security Plus videos and put them into a single PDF file, making this very easy for you to work through and work with. I put everything in there. You can find out about it at professormesser.com/securitycn. Here's my course notes. In fact, I've got them up on my screen. Here, for instance, switch routers. Here's VPN concentrator. We're just talking about VPNs. Earlier, we were talking about the web application firewalls, and I've got a little segment right here on web application firewalls. And we even talk about, in fact, the same text from those slides are right there. I've got network design information, NAT information. There's cloud computing details, IP version 4 and version 6. There's all the protocols and port numbers you have to know, the OSI model, wireless details, and more. There's 35 pages of this. It goes on, 36 pages of it. It goes on and on and on and on. The Security Plus exam, quite broad in the things you have to know. So for only $10, not only are you getting some what I think are great course notes, and folks in the chat room think they're good as well, but I also think that you also are able to help support what we do here on the website. Every dollar of this goes back to keeping things running, so you are effectively helping us as we help you. So it's a great combination, I think. Have a look at them, professormesser.com/securitycn for the security course notes. Let's do another question, shall we? Let's do another one. Here it is. In which of these cases would you be most likely to use tarpitting? This is another one where I'm doing this 2-step process, isn't it? You have to know what tarpitting is. No talking about that in the chat room. Absolutely being able to do that. But make sure that you go through the list of things to see, now that I know what tarpitting is, in which of these cases would I be most likely to use it? Would it be to mitigate a DDoS attack? Would it be for spam filtering? Would it be for IPsec encryption? Would it be for wireless network authentication? Or would it be for none of these? It would be none of the above. One of those are a piece of that. So in which cases would you be most likely to use tarpitting? It's got to be one of these, especially since there's a none of the above. It really does have to be one of these because I have an out there at the bottom. You might be asked a question on your exam that does have these none of the aboves. Now, thankfully, most people, I think, would recognize that there's a lot of combinations that you could do with this. None of the above, all of the above, A and C, A and D, A, B, and D. Obviously, that could be a mess. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody's ever said that they've run into this type of problem on the exam. Most of the exam questions are very straightforward in being able to work with that. So we need to figure out the tarpitting piece of this and being able to prevent this from happening in your organization. If you think you know, stop Googling it. You should guess. Go figure it out and being able to work through it. And go to Socrative.com and you can vote. Tell me what you think the most likely use of tarpitting might be. Go to the student login and choose the room or type in the room name of Professor Messer. That's going to be the best way to go about figuring out those pieces and working through the answer for those. I think some of you know what the answer is. In fact, I'm going to peek really quick. I think you guys are doing pretty good with this particular piece of it and being able to work through that. Tarpitting is a bit of a challenge. See, some of you have already watched the videos. That's very good. You might even know what this one is. Well, let's see how we did with this particular answer. Which of these cases would you be most likely to use tarpitting? Well, I think we're a little torn on this one. Well, I've got a few different answers here, and most of you chose, 49% of you chose spam filtering. So I think if we had to choose, it's not a majority, but what do most people think? It would be spam filtering. Mitigating a DDoS attack, 32% of you said, oh, no. So if you want to use tarpitting, mitigating a DDoS attack is the best way to do that. This is how you would get rid of that distributed denial of service attack. We have single digits for the rest of these. 9% said it's not any of these, so don't even buy A through D. It's got to be E, which is none of the above. Would it be a wireless network authentication, being able to work through those? Nope, only 7% said that, and 3% said IPsec. So it's got to be one of these and working through these and being able to figure this out. Let's first then figure out where tarpitting might be used. I think that would help us with these particular problems. This particular answer, I think, kind of jumps out at us right away because I'm going to go through a list of things that can help you prevent spam. One way to prevent spam is by setting up a whitelist. So people can only send certain send email from certain email addresses. In fact, there's a number of systems that I send to that whitelist me so that all of my emails can get through because I send quite a few emails from my website. There are also options for these, being able to get this going on. Let's have a look at these answers. We've got SMTP. SMTP standards checking is a good way. So a lot of this spam is set up to always go into your system, but it's not quite set up the right way. The email headers aren't really set to standard. If anything looks out of whack with the standards, then that's a great place to identify, wait, something's not quite right with the structure of this particular email. We need to throw it out. Very useful to have that there. The other piece that you might want to look at for preventing spam are things like reverse DNS. This is very common. You have to make sure that if you're sending email that your reverse DNS actually maps back to you, because if an IP address is coming in with mail, they're going to want to make sure that IP address really originated with you. It may say it came from Professor Messer, but the only way to know is if it really did follow up. If we reverse that IP address, does it reverse back to Professor Messer? That's what we need to know. And indeed, in this case, reverse DNS works very well. Another good way to do it, prevent spam, tarpitting. This is where we would really start preventing it. And what it is a way to frustrate the spammer, frustrate the device that's sending the mail. So the goal of the spammer is to send as much mail as possible in the shortest amount of time. What tarpitting does is if it suspects that this is coming from a spam source, it slows down the conversation, because sending mail is a whole conversation that takes place. Hello, how are you? I'm fine. Would you like some mail? Yes, I would like some mail. Okay, send the mail to me. I'm beginning to send the mail. It's this set of processes that goes back and forth. Well, if somebody says hello, oh, well, I'd like to send you some mail. Okay, you can send me some mail. All right, here's some mail. It's coming. All right, I'll acknowledge that you're sending that. That takes a long time to go through. It's extending out the entire conversation. And imagine doing that over and over and over again with every single one of these messages going back and forth. Very often the spam device thinks that perhaps you fell off the earth. You're no longer talking to me. I don't have time to talk to you. You're a bad mail server. Maybe you went down. Maybe your network connection isn't any good. So I'm going to stop sending to you. And it fails the connection and goes on to the next thing. So that's a very good way to prevent that. There's also recipient filtering, of course. You could find very specific recipient emails that's being sent. That's one good way to also filter out the email. So the spam is really what we were looking for in this case. If you chose, the 50% of you that chose spam filtering, I hit my number on that one. Got that one absolutely correct. It would not help with mitigating a DDoS attack. There are many good ways to mitigate a DDoS attack, but one of the challenges with DDoS is that it's using up a lot of resources from a lot of different locations into what's usually your firewall. And there's only so many entries a firewall can keep track of. Usually it's in the millions of entries, but a DDoS can fill up those entries very quickly. So being able to slow things down simply means that you have to store more entries, and you don't want to do that on a firewall. So usually, in fact, mitigating a DDoS attack is usually done by raw filtering of the source addresses, which is difficult for DDoS, or doing things like a random early discard, which means that if we start filling up the list of total amount of connections that we can keep, we just randomly start dropping people, which is probably going to make some people unhappy. But if we're getting near the end, that at least keeps the system up and running. And maybe we won't be able to drop real people and keep that in there as well. I think that really helps with me in being able to work through those pieces and having that there. So let's see if we can break this down a little further. And so if you got, oh, by the way, IPsec encryption does nothing when it comes to preventing spam. That's just a way to send the information in a protected mode from one side to the other. Wireless network authentication, that doesn't help us, although certainly helps us on a wireless network to protect ourselves, but it doesn't help with spam, and that's why you're using the tarpitting to begin with. And of course, it is spam filtering, so E would not be correct. It actually is one of the above. Our answer here in this case, B, spam filtering. Let's see how we do with another question. Let's shift gears a bit and talk more about managing a network, especially from a security perspective, and being able to work through those. And this particular question deals with auditing. What kind of auditing would be you or can validate your user permissions? What kind of auditing can validate your user permissions? And I have a number of different kinds of auditing that you can go through and work through some of these things. Let's see what the possible answers might be. Would it be A, privilege auditing? Would it be B, administrative auditing? Would it be operating system auditing, escalation auditing, or usage auditing? This is one of those that's really a purely security administrative function. And you're going to get a lot of those on the exam because the exam does go through process and procedure. In fact, a lot of network security is process and procedure. A lot of people think that network security is doing penetration tests and trying to hack into a system. And such a very tiny, minuscule amount of what network security is something like that. Most of network security is around finding potential problems with your processes and procedures and implementing security controls to help with keeping those systems and all of your data, especially, as safe as possible. So this is one where you will get into auditing. You'll be doing a lot of auditing when you work with network security. So knowing the answer to one of these is going to be what you need to know. If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com to the student login, and you'll be able to answer this by going to the Professor Messer room, figure out those pieces, and being able to work through those. This is one where I think that really helps going through understanding process. In fact, there's so much in the Security Plus certification. I think that's why there are 36 pages on my course notes, many more pages than my Network Plus or my A Plus, because it's so broad and knowing all of those things that are going on with security. And when you get into security, you've got to set up security policies. You have to be able to do auditing. You have to know how to set up things like disaster recovery. You have to know how to react if a security problem occurs. So all of these things are process and procedure, It's setting up for the worst and trying to make sure you know what happens if any of those are going to occur. That's really the most important part, I think. So make sure you go through this piece and know it also, being able to work through it. Yes, the auditing can be a problem at times. Let's see how we did with this one and what we think the right answer is. 67% said privilege auditing, 20% said administrative auditing, and then we got single digits for everything else. So it's probably between A and B, I think. That's probably the best place to go with those two, but clearly 68%, the vast majority, or at least a large majority, said privilege auditing is the answer for this one. So let's look at auditing types. That's what we really want to be able to do today, isn't it? To go through all of those, the auditing types, performing routine audits. So the goal, obviously, is you want to be sure that all of these policies that you've set up and all of these security controls that you have in place are working properly. So we want to see, are we matching what we would expect to see. And if things ever change, we want to know about it. And things are changing all the time with the people on the network and the responsibilities that people have and the data they need access to. So you, of course, want to be able to identify when certain actions occur. So the way you do that is to go through and audit these. Privilege auditing means that you're checking to see if everyone has the correct permissions. And that's exactly what our question was talking about, is understanding how we can validate what user permissions might be there. Privilege auditing is really the best way to do that. There's also usage auditing. You want to know how and when your resources are being used. Sometimes you can find some interesting things. Who's logging on to the network at 4 in the morning? Especially if you're an 8 to 5 shop and you find that somebody's logging in when most people are sleeping, that may be indicative of a problem. You want to talk to that user and they'll say, yeah, I can't sleep. I'm always up at 4 o'clock. And then you'll know that that's normal, but you wouldn't have any idea unless you audited and checked the usage for that particular network. Escalation auditing means that we are going to look at our disaster recovery plans. If a security problem occurs, who do I talk to? When I need to move this up the line to someone and escalate it, I need to know the process. So we need to know exactly who to call and where their contact information is to be able to make that happen. There's also administrative auditing, being able to work through the administrative piece of these and know when I'm who is set up to be an administrator, who can administer these security systems, who has access to places where they would administer these things. That's very useful to know as well. So in our case, we're dealing mostly, and the question dealt mostly with what type of auditing can validate your user permissions. It's the first one on this list, which is privilege auditing. So if you're one of the 68% of you that chose privilege auditing, got that one absolutely correct. Well done with that. Would not be administrative auditing. In this case, we are validating user permissions, not administrative access with those. So let's do another question. Let's again kind of shift gears. I like to mix these up a bit and give you some different options for these questions. This one deals with access. Well, it's sort of a user permission question, isn't it? It's an access permission. I'm being able to work through these. So which one of these would be the most useful? Let me see if I actually have the right question in my Socrative. I don't know that I do, so I might skip that one and save it for next time, because now I'm looking at my user permissions and I don't see this question here for the Socrative. So we're going to skip. It's okay, because I always have a standby question for you. And the question I have for you deals primarily with which one, this is the one that came up, which of these would not be considered OS hardening? So go to Socrative.com. So there we go. So now you know some of the questions I was going to ask of you. You probably saw them bouncing around there. This one, we finally found one that I can sync up on. So which of these would not be considered OS hardening? So I've got a number of options for you. Obviously, you have to know what OS hardening is, and then you need to be able to step through these and have it go through these pieces too. Would it be creating an IPsec tunnel, disabling unnecessary accounts, changing the management interface credentials, disabling unnecessary services, or requiring complex passwords? One of these would not be considered OS hardening. So if you think you know what the answer is, go out to Socrative.com to the room named Professor Messer, and you can figure out what that answer might be for these. I think you have an idea with these. This is one where I think most people have even done some of OS hardening. It's something you often do when working on your local devices. So many of you may already be familiar with the process of OS hardening. And in that case, you've probably even done some of these things I have here. And since I'm asking what would not be considered, you can start checking off the things that you know could not possibly be in this particular list because you've done it before. So let's see how we do with OS hardening. This is a section of the Security Plus exam that talks more about how to apply or prevent some of these problems you might run into. So you not only have to know these things, but you also have to know how to prevent these things. We've already had one question about that already. So let's step through and see how we did with this one. Which of these would not be considered OS hardening? Let's see. 71%, a clear leader, said create an IPsec tunnel. 9% tied for second, disable unnecessary services and require complex passwords. And tied for third with 6%, disable unnecessary accounts and change the management interface credentials. So is that really it? Would these really not be considered OS hardening? Well, let's talk about hardening the OS. As the name implies, it means that you're now going to make the operating system more difficult to get into. You're going to make it harder to get into that operating system. You're increasing the amount of security with those and being able to work through it. There's not really just one thing you can do to harden your operating system. You can't just say, yeah, click this button. Hey, there you go. Your operating system's hardened. It doesn't work that way. You have to really look at a number of different aspects of how people access the operating system to be able to do this. And it's not something you also do when it's done. You have to constantly provide maintenance to keep your operating system as secure as possible. This is one where even a misconfiguration of one thing opens up your entire operating system. So you do have to have a very common maintenance cycle. And of course, you have to also keep going back and making sure and auditing to make sure that maintenance cycle is being used that way. That's another important part of this as well, I think. Whenever you start working through hardening the operating system, it's going to be things like we mentioned here. In fact, those of you that did not choose B through E got that. You were right on the money, because disabling unnecessary accounts is absolutely a way to harden your operating system. Changing the management interface credentials, absolutely a way to harden the operating system. Disabling unnecessary services, requiring complex passwords are all ways to make your operating system more secure. That's really the key. Now, creating an IPsec tunnel will help keep information secure as it goes across the network, but it does nothing to make your operating system more secure. So A in this case would be the correct answer, because that does not really help with operating system hardening. So make sure that you, the 63% of you that got that one absolutely right, you absolutely were very sure about that one. Well done with getting that one correct, being able to do that. Whenever I start working through these problems and trying to understand the details of it, I think that's where, especially with operating system, it's constant maintenance. At least once a month, you're getting patches from Microsoft. You're sometimes getting them in between. Application developers like Adobe and others are going to provide you with patches and updates through the month. It's just constant motion and being able to work through those. So hopefully that is giving you some perspective and what the options might be on your side to be able to work through operating system hardening. You're probably already doing these things anyway and being able to work through them. We've got time for another question, so let's go through these and being able to work through these pieces. This particular question, I can't see all of it because of my head in the way, so let's see if I can move me. There we go. Which of these would restrict the installation of unapproved applications on a mobile device? Which of these would indeed restrict the installation of unapproved applications? Would it be geofencing? Would it be device encryption? Would it be credential management? Would it be MDM whitelisting? Or would it be storage segmentation? One of these would indeed restrict the installation of unapproved applications on a mobile device. This is absolutely one you have to think about, especially on the Security Plus exam, and really all the CompTIA exams these days are all very focused on not just desktop operating systems, but mobile operating systems as well. So especially on the Security Plus, there's a lot more mobile questions. On the Network Plus that was released earlier this year, a lot more mobile questions. And certainly on the brand new A+, which was released just a month or so ago, a huge amount of increase for the mobile devices. It just makes sense because we have so much with mobile devices we're working through. If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com and figure out what this might be and able to work through these, being able to have that there. That is very useful to have this and being able to work through those. See if you happen to know with those and being able to figure out what the answer might be. The idea, I think, whenever I start working through these problems is I have to break it down into individual pieces, because each one of these is really its own little world. I tried to make it so that you would have to step through each one of those and being able to work through all of those pieces and have that there. I think most of you probably have a good idea. In fact, I'm going to sneak a peek at how we're doing with this one. Seems that we run into this a lot. If you have a mobile device and you're using that mobile device in an organization, you probably even do have a number of these things that are happening on your own device. So that's one that I think can be very, very useful, being able to work through those. That's one. So let's see how we did with this one. Let's see what the answer might be and being able to work through these. If you think you have answered. 66% of you said MDM whitelisting, so certainly a majority. But right behind it, 22% credential management would be a way to restrict the installation of unapproved applications. And in the single digits is geofencing, device encryption, and storage segmentation. So that's quite a bit whenever you're working through these. So which one would it be? Well, for preventing installation of unapproved applications on a mobile device, the best way to do it is to whitelist it. This is what you're usually seeing when people work through a mobile device manager, especially when you work through all of these pieces. And the real challenge whenever an organization has a mobile device, it's usually your mobile device. One of the challenges, of course, is that the applications that you get to load can come from anywhere. Sometimes if it's an iOS device, they're coming from the Apple Store. If you have an Android device, they really could come from almost anywhere because you can sideload the applications there. So what your employer might do is set up a list of here's the applications that can be installed. And if you're not in that list, it's not going to install them and work through them. So that's one where, especially when I start working through the details of how to do this, I'm doing it through a mobile device manager. Whoever somebody's in charge of doing this in your environment, they're managing your mobile devices, and this mobile device manager can configure and set up many different things on your mobile device. Makes it very easy to work through those pieces. So if I'm trying to figure out the best way to whitelist or to restrict an application, it's going to be a whitelist. And it's usually going to be done through a mobile device manager, being able to work through those pieces. The idea of geofencing is one where I can restrict certain capabilities of my mobile device based on where that mobile device might be geographically. So a good example of this, and I think I use it in some of mine, is that the geofencing, if I get into my anywhere around my facility, maybe the camera's turned off automatically. But as soon as I drive away, the camera's automatically turned back on. It's a very common way to use geofencing. Device encryption, obviously keeping things secure on your device is important, but that doesn't prevent me from installing applications. Credential management is where I would allow or provide different ways to authenticate to the device. Maybe it's with a single username and password. Maybe it's done through a biometric. Maybe it's done with a third piece. Very useful to have that there. And have that there working with you so that the person knows it's you that logged into the device. Maybe there's an additional method of logging in, not just username and password, but I might use some other type of method to be able to get into that and work through those pieces. And storage segmentation is useful, especially on mobile devices. So one part of the device would be for work. Another part of the same device might be for your normal use, but that doesn't stop you from installing applications. The only way to do that is by whitelisting the apps through a mobile device manager. Now, if you are someone who is watching this for continuing education credits, then you need to know that whitelisting is going to be your keyword for this month. Go to either the top or the bottom of any page on the Professor Messer website. There's a link for Contact Us. You would, in that contact list, put your name, put that it is the November 2015 Security Plus Study Group, and that the special code word that you need to know is whitelisting. Maybe you can even put a little note in there because I'm reading these as well. And I'll send you back a digitally signed certificate so that you can get that 1 credit of continuing education units for this. That might be useful to have as well whenever you're working through all of those pieces. Well, for those of you that have been watching these videos and study groups for a while, you know that one of the things that you'll be challenged with these questions is you don't just get multiple choice questions on your Security Plus exam, you also get performance-based questions. So you might get a question that is really asking you for a different set of tasks. It's not just answering A, B, C, D, or E. You may have to put things in a certain order. There may be a fill in the blank. You may have to specify how to connect things together from a security perspective. You never know what you're going to run into. So you do have, of course, have to know the exam objectives, but you also have to know how to apply a number of those things from the exam objectives. One of those things we even talked about today, we talked about, for instance, protocol analyzers, and we talked about looking and capturing session ID information and being able to work through other pieces of this. Well, I have some labs for you might be interested in, and there's also some free capabilities that come with this you may want to know about, is that there is the GTS Learning Live Labs. You can find out more about these at professormesser.com/seclabs. The GTS Learning Live Labs are useful because they actually set up for you all the operating systems, all the routers, all the VPN connections, everything you would need to be able to step through what these particular things might be. And they're all available to use out on the web. All you need is a browser. You don't need any extra software. You don't need anything extra loaded. It's all there and being able to work through it. This is one where I find that it's very useful, not only useful to use and available to use for Security Plus, but if you use my link, you get a discount on these. If you follow the professormesser.com/seclabs, instead of paying the normal $159 that you'd pay on the GTS Learning site, they're only $99 to get access to these labs for a year. You also, by the way, if you follow that link, there's an option there to get an hour for free. You can try it out, see if it's for you, see if it's something that you can really use to make use of your study time. And whenever I'm working with these, I'm clicking around to my servers and being able to work with them. The browser displays and the screens that I have setting up on here I am connecting to a Windows Server device. It's even running Wireshark. There's a router that just started up. The gateway just started up. So now I've got a way to capture this information, and it's a full-blown Windows setup. This isn't an emulated configuration. On the right side, it's kind of hard to see, but the lab is on the right side, starting with section 1. What do I do first? View an ARP table, step through it, even shows you what you should expect to see in those ARP tables. I'm just kind of jumping around because you don't have to follow this path if you don't want to. You can simply just start capturing on an interface and getting data to come into this. And I can flip around to other devices as well. I can go to the client that they've got set up, the gateway that they have here. All of these are running right now. It even gives you the credentials and the passwords and things you might want to use, and it's all available to try for absolutely free. You think you'd like to try this out, go try it out at professormesser.com/seclabs. You can try it out for an hour for free and see if it's something you might want to use. And I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning for helping to sponsor what we do here as well. Well, that brings us, to another hour of a study group. That one went by pretty quick. For those of you that are watching live, I want to make sure that you know that I just stick around for probably an hour or so after this in the after show to answer questions from the chat room, and I'll open up the phone lines as well for you to call in. But of course, I do these every month, so you can always check in with me. And again, in December, we'll do another one of these on December the 16th. I have one planned already. You can join, and the study group will go through another set of Security Plus questions. As you can see, I've got another set of them there for you to go through and be able to work through other questions. There is a lot that happens throughout the month. And if you always want to keep track of what's going on, you can, of course, follow what we're doing here at the Professor Messer website. Again, the course notes you can find at professormesser.com/securitycn. And of course, as I mentioned, you type in professormesser.com/something. So professormesser.com/Facebook/Twitter/Google+/Instagram/ one of those things. It will take you to that particular place. Don't forget about the vouchers where you can get a discount on your CompTIA vouchers. Those are useful to have at professormesser.com/vouchers. And again, my thanks to GTS Learning and sponsoring what we do here. You can find out about their live labs and get an hour for free at professormesser.com/seclabs. And of course, thanks to you. I wouldn't be able to do any of these study groups if it wasn't for you being able to be here and answer these questions. Again, if you're watching this live, stick around for the extra hour. For those of you on the replay, you can stick around as well. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month on the study group. Thanks, everyone. That was a lot in a very short period of time. Should have been more in a very short period of time. Felt like I need to cram in a couple of extra questions there. I do not have an app on an app store anywhere. I don't know what that's about. There is no Professor Messer app. If there is a Professor Messer app, please let me know, because I didn't write it. That's one we can fix immediately, being able to work through those, because there should not be an app anywhere with my name on it. Thank you. Take a beverage break there. Let's take some questions from the chat room, and I've got other questions that you've sent in as well. I'm going to start up the phone lines as well, so you're able to call in as soon as I figure out the URL myself. I have to do all of these sort of behind the scenes. As you can see, there's no staff here manning the phones. There is a staff here manning the phones. That would be me, being able to man the phones. So that's what I'm doing right now, is setting up the phone line and getting that piece going. And we host a show so you can actually call in with those things if you would like to. Need to turn some of these things down so it doesn't hit you whenever I'm working through these. Let me call in to the show. Thank you for indulging me with this. And you don't have to call in. You could, of course, put your questions in the chat room as well at professormesser.com/live. The chat is right there, being able to work through those. So you're more than welcome to do that as well. Well, you're welcome. Let me put in this information. Yes. It asks me for a PIN number, which we all know is not right. Why would it do that? Because there's no such thing as, well, I guess there is a such thing as a PIN number, but it just sounds redundant, doesn't it? So here, of course, you could call in. I think I even have a number there. So if you want to call in, is 855-785-RJ45. So that's toll free. You can call from anywhere in the United States or on Skype for absolutely free. No Skype minutes coming in that, and being able to work with that. The hot beverage of the day is a hot chocolate. No coffee today. So I mixed it up a bit. A WAF is not the same thing as WebSense, although WebSense may have a WAF capability in some of their. WebSense is generally understood to be a URL filter. So it's really just filtering out URLs or URL categories. They usually will categorize millions and millions and millions of URLs into categories. So they'll have a shopping category. So everything that's a shopping website goes in the shopping category. They might have a gaming category. So every website associated with games goes in the gaming category. There might be a category for education. All educational sites might be put in this particular category, and being able to work through those. This is a very common thing that you'll find in places that want to filter what people see in a browser. And URL categorization is really a challenge. You can imagine with the millions and millions and millions of websites, a lot of this has to be done automatically. So there's constant maintenance to not only create a broad brush of what you might want to prevent. Maybe in your site, you want to prevent gaming. You want to prevent adult websites. You want to prevent websites dealing with firearms. I mean, there's all kinds of categories. And you can decide what your philosophy is around filtering those things. Some places the philosophy is, I want to filter everything. Some places the philosophy is, I don't want to filter everything, but I want to filter out certain things. So it's really up to you and how you use the URL filter and being able to work through it. And that's one that, especially when I'm working through those, it can be a bit of a challenge managing such a broad perspective. And I guess it really is depends on where you go. I used to work with a company that had technologies that did URL filtering, and it really depended. When we walked in and they said, we want to be able to filter things, I'd have to ask a lot of questions. What do you want to filter? Why do you want to filter? What's your philosophy on filtering? You're never quite sure exactly where someone may be coming from. So they have to say that we're very tight. We want to only whitelist websites, or we're a very open organization. We just want to prevent things that we know are just inappropriate for use at work. And some organizations just, they don't want to block anything. Maybe they just want to log everything. That could be happening as well. So you're never quite sure exactly what it will be. That's why I always have to ask. And WebSense, URL filtering by itself, so kind of an antiquated way to do this. These days, the URL filtering capabilities are built into next generation firewalls. So you rarely see new WebSense implementations going in. Usually it's one where you're combining that URL filtering with another product itself and being able to work with this. Yeah, it kind of sounds like China. Some organizations are very restrictive. Some organizations are not. It just depends on the individual philosophy and being able to work through those. For the exam, what percentage of performance-based questions versus multiple choice? You're never quite sure. CompTIA doesn't tell you. All they tell you is that you get a maximum of 90 questions, and that there's going to be a combination of those two. Now, what I have seen written online, probably violating the exam agreement, is that most people get a handful of performance-based questions. CompTIA could ask you 10 of them. They could ask you 3. They could ask you 90. They aren't going to ask you 90 because the performance-based questions usually take more time than a multiple choice. But I think most people have reported that it probably is about a handful to 10 different questions. I guess they could ask you more than that. That's usually what you should expect there as well, to be able to work through those. Yeah, the Security Plus exam doesn't focus so much on connectors and cables, and there's a bit of networking detail on the exam. Certainly not as much as the Network Plus. These days, not as much as the A Plus either. The A Plus tends to have a ton of connectors on it and work through those as well, and being able to work through those pieces. What a challenge to be able to remember those. I can only imagine. As someone who's been working in networking for a long time, you get used to these connectors. You know what they are. You've worked with them. There's some practical application that you've done with these physical devices. So you've had to order LC connectors for your fiber or SC connectors for your fiber. You've worked with BNC connectors. You've worked with an Ethernet implementation that needed Cat5 and another one that needed Cat6. You understand that there are differences in those connectors between them, and you just get accustomed to knowing them. But if you've never had to touch them before, I can imagine it's a little bit of a challenge to understand all these crazy terms we assign to everything and knowing what they do. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges you'll run into. In fact, is trying to apply some of these things that you have to have worked with. Now, of course, on the Security Plus exam, Security Plus expects that you do have some of that knowledge, though. Let me flip over to my Security Plus exam objectives and show you. That's one thing I definitely want to show you is the exam objectives. Let's have a look at these. Flip this up on the screen so you can see it. Here's my SY0401 exam objectives. And one of the things they say here, and this is a really kind of points back to the comment that you're making around those, is that it's aimed at IT security professional who has a minimum of 2 years experience in IT administration with a focus on security. So they already expect you've been in this for 2 years, a significant amount of time being able to work through these pieces, and that you've had a day-to-day technical information security experience. And that doesn't mean that you've been the security person, but you've had to deal with some aspect of security day-to-day in what you're doing. That could be something as configuring a group policy so that passwords are protected. I mean, that's security. And that they expect that you have a broad knowledge of security concerns and implementation, including the topics in the domain list below, which include network security, compliance and operational security, threats and vulnerabilities, application data and host security, access control and identity management, and cryptography. So quite a bit there to know. And as BSOD has already mentioned in the chat room, the tests are linear. They are not adaptive, and you can go back and forth. You can go to a question, and if you think you got that one wrong, you can reverse yourself. There are some exams. Cisco's a good example, which is a linear exam. It's still not adaptive, but you can't go back. That's one of the challenges with the Cisco test. An adaptive exam will take your answer and then adjust the rest of the exam around what you answered. Not a lot of people doing adaptive exams anymore. I think because it turns a lot of people off to the certification because you miss something and then they start drilling you on it to see, did you really know this or did you not? And it becomes more of a challenge of how you're answering and what it's taking. And I didn't mean to answer that. Oh, now I remember, but I can't go back. What a challenge with that. And there are, I'm not saying they're not all adaptive. Poor Steve is saying in the chat room, yep, I'm taking an adaptive exam. Sorry to hear that. What a challenge, just to keep track. And I don't think it's a challenge knowing the content. Knowing the content's exactly the same. The challenge is not clicking the wrong thing. This is what my biggest challenge when I'm taking a certification exam is. I'm always worried about I'm clicking the wrong thing. I'm going through the process of, okay, is it A, B, C, or D? And the adrenaline is going and I'm reading the question, yet I'm not understanding the question. So I'm reading it 3 or 4 times, taking deep breaths. Okay, let me figure it out. And going through the 4 answers. Oh, it's B. Of course it's B. I click next. Oh, no, wait a second. It's not B, it's C, but it's too late. I click next. So you have to kind of, if your exam like CompTIA, you can back up. You can reverse, go to the previous question and change your answer. Some exams don't allow you to do that. And some exams that are adaptive certainly don't allow you to go backwards and are changing the exam as you go forwards, which are even more scary and working through those. Maybe not scary, but certainly a challenge in trying to get it straight in your head for those pieces. Certainly a challenge. If you're looking for continuing the piece that I always go through in working through these, I like to go through an exam and spend the first 10 minutes or so before I click the start button, either writing things down on the paper or the whiteboard that they give me, and going through and just becoming comfortable with the room, getting acclimated to the room, letting the adrenaline kind of wear itself off a little bit, and working through those pieces. I think that's where it really helps me understand what I need to know in getting through those pieces. I think that helps me a lot anyway with those. In that way, they usually set up some time for you to do that. There's usually a clock ticking down 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, so that you don't have to start the exam immediately. You can sit there, just take it easy. You don't have to do anything. You can just sit there with your arms at your side. Just let it all sort of get started. Write some things down on the whiteboard. Think about the different domains and content that's there. Think about the process you're going to go through with understanding certain topics that are a challenge for you. I think that helps a lot. Then you can click go, and then you're writing the exam. You've kind of burned off the adrenaline, and now you can focus on the exam piece. In fact, I should do more of that, I think, whenever I go for exams. The last exam I took was also, let me think about this. The last certification exam I took, I think, was a beta exam. So there wasn't a lot of risk involved. Companies often do this when they're releasing a new version of an exam, and you should look for this. Microsoft does this. CompTIA, I haven't seen CompTIA do this with many of their certifications. Microsoft certainly does. The one I was taking was a security exam, and they said, we're in a beta mode that if you show up and take this exam, we're going to ask you every possible question from the exam pool. So we block off 4 hours to take the exam. I'm not kidding, 4 hours. And we're going to ask you every possible question. But if you get a big chunk of those right, you get the certification for free, because you don't pay to take the beta. So, or you pay very little to take the beta. So you can walk in, and of course it's a beta, so they don't tell you what's on the exam yet. There's no exam objectives yet. So you're kind of walking into it with the knowledge that you may know nothing, but you're going to step through these questions. And the last one I took was a beta. I sat down. 4 hours later, I'm walking out. 4 hours later, Mrs. Professor Messer, I checked my phone. There's like 15 messages. Where are you? I thought you were taking a certification exam. You're in and out in an hour, and it's been 4. So I wasn't ready for the time frame either, but we straightened all of that out. And I did pass that beta exam, thankfully. So if I'm going to sit there for 4 hours, I'm going to pass that exam. It's going to drive me crazy if I don't pass the exam. So fortunately, I did. I'm glad that worked out that way as well. But you could take advantage of this too. The real benefit, of course, is that's free. No money or very little money to take that exam. I know that a lot of you taking the Security Plus exam are very focused on doing it because it is what the U.S. federal government considers it to be sort of the entry level or minimum requirement that you need for a number of their IT positions. So this is your entry level exam into IT. Now, fortunately, there's no command lines or things like that you have to know for the Security Plus exam. It's really all about the content. I think that's why when you look at my course notes, like they're 36 pages long, because there's so much process, procedure. It's not like you're looking at a diagram of a connector. You have to know what that connector is. You have to think about how you handle a security event and all of the sub-processes associated with that security event. And they all have to be documented, and you all have to break those things down. Yeah, and so that's a good example. Here's one where in the Navy, web app developer, they want you to know security when you're working through the development side of things, or at least an overview of security, and Security Plus will certainly do that for you. being able to get that there. That's a pretty good thing to know. It's almost like I mentioned the Network Plus exam. People say, should I get networking certifications? And I think no matter what you do, whether it is application development or data center management or server administration or certainly network administration, you should know about networking. Database administration, you should do anything about networking. So that's something that applies no matter what you do in IT. Security is practically the same way because it applies on the application side. It certainly applies in the data center. It applies for networks. It applies for databases, all of those pieces. Very useful. Now, if you're someone who is working in IT and doing this, networking and security is certainly top of mind. And it's certainly one of the most I would say the most wanted, the most needed type of role in IT right now is probably networking and security. It's certainly some that pay the highest. So that's where you kind of see where the demand is for good network and security people for those pieces. It comes in handy to know those things too and working through those. We do have this networking segment. I know the answer in the chat room. For the people watching live, though, I do these study groups, one a month for A+, for Network Plus, and Security Plus. We're on the Security Plus week right now. And I've changed up the weeks a little bit. You'll notice we're doing them earlier in the month because we have, in the United States, the Thanksgiving holiday is coming up. So we'll be doing Thanksgiving at the end of November. That's next week, isn't it? Is that week next week? Thanksgiving already. So, of course, no study group next week. And then the beginning of December, we'll start up with our A+, our Network Plus, and our Security Plus study group again. And again, the last part of December, I'm not going to do any live events either. And I kind of like this earlier in the month kind of thing. So we might continue this into the new year unless we fall on a holiday, and then I'll mix things around again. It can be a little bit of a challenge to schedule these. So if you're ever wondering when the next one of these is, maybe you're watching the replay and we're into the next year, you can always go to Professor Messer website. There's a calendar link at the top of the page. Or as I mentioned, you type in professormesser.com/something, in my case, /calendar, and it will absolutely take you there as well to be able to work through those. So that's a good way to find out when's the next one of these things, when's the next live event, when's the next thing we're working on, and that's a good way to do it is professormesser.com/calendar. I try to keep those updated a couple of months in advance so you can get your hands on those and work through them, so you know when it's coming. And I've got to work on getting there's a link I can add to that so you can have it automatically added to your calendar. But the application that I use to do this is linking that from a protected part of my website or a part that I keep protected. So if you clicked on it, it would prompt you for a username and password, and that sort of defeats the purpose. So I'll work on those pieces too, and have those there. So you can always work through those and being able to get those pieces. When you are testing the exam, NK, you do get the results immediately. Well, sort of immediately. CompTIA asks you to complete a survey before they give you the results of the exam. So it is after you've gone through all of the questions, you've used up your 90 minutes, you've clicked the finish button. I'm submitting this exam and I'm done with it. They don't tell you what the answer is yet. They don't tell you if you're certificated, got the certification quite yet. You have to step through now a set of questions about the exam and about you. And then as soon as you finish the survey and say, yes, I'm done with the survey, then they tell you if you passed or not. So you will know before you leave the room whether you passed the certification or not. Now, whether you do or not, make sure you get the printout. Like if you failed, you failed by a point, you're really angry, you get up, you walk out. Make sure you stop at wherever their front desk or administration desk is and pick up the printout, because it will tell you all of the domains and it will tell you how you did on each one of those. So it may tell you that you did great on 5 of the domains, but this last one you didn't do well. So when you're ready to come back and take the exam again, you know what section you should be studying. It can be really useful. A number of people have told me, I walked out and they didn't even offer to give me any printouts or anything. And I just walked out, I was done. And I said, well, you need to turn around and go back and go get that, because that gives you a lot of really good intelligence about how you did with these topics. They don't tell you question by question. They aren't going to even tell you ever if you got a question right or not, but they will give you that very broad overview of how you did with each one of those. And everyone does the survey. So that is one of those things you have to do. The survey, fortunately, does not count on your final score. You could get the survey wrong and you'd be fine, but you do have to complete the survey and get through it, or they're not going to give you a sheet of paper at the end. The testing process itself is pretty well documented on, let me move this over, drop my coffee everywhere. This is why I use this coffee, by the way, in my Contigo mug, because it just, nothing happens. This is full. There's nothing going to happen there. I would recommend that if you're ever around anything, any equipment whatsoever, laptop or otherwise, especially this equipment, that you're using something like that, which I use always, to be able to work through that. There's a great YouTube video of the exam experience. So if you're trying to figure out what is the front end I'm going to work through, what are the screens like? What options do I have? The video is called Taking a CompTIA Exam, and they have just horrible music that you can watch with this. Let me flip over. So they step you through. Here's somebody, they're taking their exams right now. And they take you through from the very beginning of the exam all the way through, showing you what you'll see on the screen. Oh, look, there's navigation arrows. There's a checkbox at the top that you can flag for resuming. The timer's at the top. So now you're accustomed to what you would run into. There is question types. So they take you through the multiple response. But as I mentioned, you could get performance-based questions, which might also be drag and drop. It could be questions with exhibits. And that doesn't look like exhibit at all. Performance-based questions, they're talking specifically about command lines here, but there are no command lines you need to know for Security Plus. Don't think I'm talking out of school there if you look at the exam objectives. Maybe some that give you a scenario you have to step through. Maybe it's not command line, but it's in a GUI type form. And then they will tell you right there, how'd you do? And give you they don't tell you that you're going to take a survey though. That's always a surprise. But it's a nice overview. That's probably one of the best videos they've done. It kind of gives you an idea of what you'll run into with the exam so you can at least breathe a little better with those pieces. And this is, for those of you in the chat room that are looking at these certifications, there's a number of Security Plus or security-related certifications from CompTIA. And you're right, there's two primary security certifications you'll find from CompTIA. One is the Security Plus, and the other is the CASP. The CASP exam is the Advanced Security Practitioner certification from CompTIA. It is kind of the next step in security. So once you get your Security Plus, the CASP, the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner, would be the next step that you would run into. So this is very detailed. Enterprise security, risk management, incident response, research and analysis, integration of computing, communications, and business disciplines, as well as technical integrations. This is CompTIA's way of getting into the more advanced security certification market. So that is one that they're really struggling. I mean, there are a lot of well-known higher level security certifications in the world. Perhaps one that is probably the most well-known and probably from an employer's perspective, the one they desire the most is the CISSP. The CISSP that's it. That's the one, kind of the gold standard for security professionals to have. That is one that you can get through ISC Squared. So if we look at, I think I have ISC Squared's website right here. So ISC Squared is the one that they offer a number of certification exams, but CISSP is perhaps one of their the most popular, but it also has a very large set of prerequisites that you need to have to be able to take that. And CompTIA is trying to compete with this. They're trying to get into that piece of it. They don't have the same prerequisites. In fact, the recommended experience they have on their list for the CASP is 10 years of experience in IT administration, 5 years of hands-on security. So a big difference than the 2 years that you've seen on the others. That's pretty useful to know. But people don't know the CASP yet. People, specifically employers, don't know about the CASP, or they're just now learning about the CASP. So the value of the certification, again, is going to be based on what you do with it. So if nobody knows about this and you have it, is it valuable to you? I think that will change as the years go by, but it's one that is certainly a little bit more of a challenge. For those of you in the chat room that are having problems with the voucher code, when you go to professormesser.com/vouchers, make sure you follow the instructions very, very closely. And when I say follow them very, very closely, follow them exactly. They're not going to work unless you follow those instructions exactly. The instructions are in red on that page. The exam voucher code works fantastic. I've tested it, and it will work just fine, probably well into the end of the year. So make sure you follow the instructions, because people will come in the chat room saying, I'm on this website, I'm trying to put the code in, it's not taking it. And I say, you're on the wrong website. They say, how do I know what website? Because I put it in the instructions. Go read those instructions, and if it's foolproof if you do that. You'll do fine with getting those and working through those pieces and having it there. And the vouchers are very useful too. It's nice to get a discount off the voucher codes as well, and being able to get those for a discount and having them there. There were a number of other questions I saw come through earlier in the presentation. I'm getting a number of folks that are also sending me or that sent me direct questions during the presentation as well. So let me flip through some of these and being able to work through those pieces. I've also got the questions you sent me. I need to pull those up as well. That's one of the things you may have noticed when you register for this. You obviously only register one time. So I don't make you register every week. If you're getting the registration emails and you don't want to get them anymore, there's a link at the bottom. You click it, you'll never get them again. It is foolproof. I'm not some dirty spammer who's just going to keep emailing you. You don't want the message? I'm not going to send it to you. It's a simple process. And I give you complete control over that. And it's also not one of these things where it tells you, oh, you'll be removed in 10 working days. I hate that. If I just wanted to be unsubscribed from your service, it's all automated. It's all computers. It's all done at the speed of light. You should be removed immediately from that mailing list. And if you unsubscribe from mine, you absolutely are unsubscribed immediately. I don't keep you around in a group and send you email when you don't want it. That part doesn't make any sense to me either. I'm not sure what that's about when people do that. So let me pull up some of the questions you've been sending me for the Security Plus study group and those pieces. There are a number of ways to also go through and renew your certifications as well. CompTIA has a pretty good renewal page to go through those. So you might want to even look at those pieces too. They go into a lot of detail, but it's a lot of reading because there's so many options to renew your certification that you really have to read through it a couple of times to be able to get that there. I think that's one when I work through those pieces, it's a bit of a challenge. Let's sort through some of these and being able to work through all of this data. Let's have a look at your questions. Whenever I was working through these, there's a lot of different questions on security that come through. A lot of people also send A+ and Network Plus questions, and I'm sorry I can't answer those on this study group, but if you tune into the A+ or the Network Plus study group, I absolutely will. So we'll go through those pieces too. In the chat room, some of you have asked about securing my home network, and my home network is this network as well, because my studio is in my home. There is obviously a lot of technology here, and I don't have a lot of services here. I don't keep a lot of, I don't have any servers here. Not just many. I don't have any of my servers or services here at the studios. Everything is somewhere else. I've contracted with very large companies who have a huge data center that have many different cloud-based virtual systems and load balancers and reverse proxies and security systems. And I put all of those out there somewhere else. That way I don't have to have a big infrastructure here. And generally having this type of equipment at home, like servers and load balancers, that just has a number of challenges associated with it because the service providers don't generally treat you like a business entity. They usually treat you like a residential entity, which isn't a big deal until something breaks. And if you are a business, you need things broken to be fixed immediately. So a lot of the security pieces that I use are somewhere else. So to protect my website, to protect the things on my website, I use a number of the things that I discuss on the Security Plus exam. One is, and it's become very popular with many websites, is a reverse proxy. So when you hit the Professor Messer webpage, your browser hits it, it's really hitting a proxy on the outside of my network, or at least the outside of where my network, my server network is. And it is performing the request back to me over an encrypted channel, and I'm providing the answer back, and then it's answering you. That reverse proxy is a great way to set up that communication because it's separating you from the rest of the infrastructure. Plus, I've got these reverse proxies all over the world. So no matter where you are, you're getting the fastest possible response because the proxy is also caching information. Makes it very quick. Why give you the same images? Why go back and get those over and over when it can just store them locally and give them to you very quickly? There's also a load balancer the proxy's talking to. So not only are you proxied, but you're also load balanced, and I have multiple web servers communicating on the backside as well. So that's a good example for those of you asking, and Kelly was asking about how my servers and other things are protected. That's exactly the way I'm doing it. Now, obviously, there's other intricate pieces within that. I'm not going to explain all of those details because talking about your security posture is a very good way to allow people access into your systems. So having information remaining private is a good security tool. Make sure you don't tell people what type of firewall you're using. Don't tell people what type of switches you have. Don't tell people the type of load balancer, the type of proxy. They may be able to find out some of that information, and you certainly could if you started doing some work on the back end and looking at different things than the communication going back and forth. You could figure out some of it. But because there's a proxy in front of all of this, everything else is kind of invisible to you. So that's how it works. And how those that's the intention is to hide a lot of the infrastructure and give you just one way to look into what's going on. In fact, you have no idea what the IP addresses are of those servers. You'll never know. All you know is the reverse proxy. It's a real key for those pieces and working through them. And locally, then, to answer the question about what I have here, in my home and in the studio, I generally keep what is basically in the studio is a business router. In fact, it's the business router and firewall provided by my internet service provider. And in my home, it's a Netgear wireless router because I don't have any services internal. People aren't connecting to anything inside. I really need something to act as a stateful firewall, and those devices do an excellent job at being a stateful firewall. I'm not doing URL filtering. I'm not doing network-based virus detection. I'm not doing any of those more fancier functions. I think I could with some of the equipment I have, but I don't have a need for it. So that's one thing that I don't have to worry about those pieces. That's one where, especially when I'm working through those pieces, it's important to me. So let's talk about renewals since that came up earlier. And the question in the chat room is about if I take and successfully pass the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus within a few months of each other, when it's time to renew, well, I have to renew each one of those certifications or just the highest one obtained. Now, fortunately, CompTIA, in the way that they do the certifications, they only require that you renew the highest certification that you own. Of course, it would be useful for you to be able to look to see which one is the highest certification. So if you go to the Google machine, you type in CompTIA certification, there is a website or a set of web pages CompTIA set up that tells you exactly how to renew the certification. And they tell you that you need to update and renew the highest certification that you have. Now, on the right side, they have different categories and they frequently ask questions and other pieces of this. They also have a list of renewing only your highest level CompTIA certification. And here's the list if you're trying to figure out what's lowest and what's highest. So it's A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and CASP. They also have partial renewals that go a little bit further, A+, Network Plus, Mobility, Security, Cloud, and CASP. So that's one of the things you can do. That's if you're renewing it by doing this through a CompTIA exam. but you could renew exams from other manufacturers. For instance, let's click on Security Plus at the bottom of their renewal page. I could get a Checkpoint certification, Cisco. There's the CompTIA, CWNP, eCouncil, GIAC, HP, IBM, ISACA, ISC Squared, LPI, Microsoft. I get Microsoft certifications to renew my Security Plus, Oracle, Red Hat, and SCP. So you could go take certifications from another organization and get a set of credits that you can then apply towards the renewal. In fact, you get plenty here. You get 50 credits for most of these, which would renew your Security Plus certification. So that's a good way to do it in those particular cases. But you do have to pay your annual maintenance fees to be able to certify with a third-party certification. If you're taking a CompTIA certification, you pay no annual maintenance fees to renew. So that's kind of nice. You also, the clock starts when you make the renewal. So if you renew your Security Plus today, everything gets renewed for the next 3 years starting on that day. So you don't stack. If you take your A Plus, your Network Plus, and Security Plus, it's not 3 years plus 3 years plus 3 years, 9 years. Nope, it's 3 years always. That's the maximum it can be. Linux Plus is not on this list for renewing Security Plus. Linux Plus is not technically a CompTIA exam. It is an exam from a third party that CompTIA licenses, third party being LPI. And they even tell you it's powered by LPI, means we simply licensed it from LPI and call it CompTIA. So they don't use that one as any type of renewal. It's not part of their 3-year renewal piece in there. So that's one that I think comes in handy and being able to work through those is knowing the renewal pieces. Make sure you go through those pieces as well, being able to work with those. I think most people will probably take their A Plus, then their Network Plus and Security Plus and renew that way. Although if I was in that position and working in IT, a lot of the things that you can do, they have a list of activities on their renewal page that you can follow. They have an activity summaries document. I'll click on that. So there's a lot of things you can do to renew. You can earn a CompTIA or non-CompTIA certification, but you can do any one of these things. Teach a course, create instructional materials, complete a CompTIA exam development workshop, be an active IT board/chapter participant, be an active member of an IT association, publish an article, white paper, blog post, or a book, attend a webinar, attend a conference, attend a training course, complete a college course, complete an American Council on Education accredited course, or work experience. So a lot of the things you may do normally are just part of what you do. It just give you CE credits just by doing normal stuff. So works for me, being able to have that. For those of you in the chat room that are looking desperately for some type of application in an app store, from me, I have no idea why you do that. You won't find one. You're frustrated because you won't find one because there's not one. I don't have an app in Google Play. I don't have an app in iOS store. I mentioned earlier if you wanted to grab the Socrative student app, you can find that in the Google Play or iOS app store or in the Microsoft Windows store. Socrative student app would be useful to have that there. So that's where I was referring to when I talk about an app. So a question in the chat room about public/private key, symmetrical/asymmetrical question. That was just, I think you just mentioned like 6 videos that cover that particular set of topics. You're welcome to go through and break that down. If there's a specific question about those, we could talk about them. Last week or last month, for example, I had a question about digital signatures. And in fact, I sign when you send me the continuing education request with the special keyword that you would have known had you watched the first hour, that I send back to you digitally signed. So you can't modify it and put other people's names in it. You have to, it is digital signatured, and I add the digital signature as an attachment, which is really the best way to do it, sent it as an attachment to that email I send back to you. That way, if somebody wanted to verify that I really sent this with your name on it for this month and this topic, they could verify that. Makes it easy. So it's a very easy way instead of sending a paper. In fact, a paper certificate's even worse because I could forge a paper certificate. You would not be able to do that in those pieces. No, there's no application. You will not find a Professor Messer app in the rooms in the Android or iOS app store. Alas, no plans for that at the moment. That's remarkable. I do get some great emails though. You got to keep sending me the great emails. Thank you so much for making those happen too. There's quite a bit that comes through. Let's go back to one of these questions that came in. There were a couple more I wanted to send on. Some of you sent some very cheeky questions. I'm not going to go through them, but you know who you are. Thank you for sending those. If you don't have a question, at least there's something there for those pieces. It's interesting where we have the questions coming from, because a lot of people do focus on the cryptography section, that last domain. And I want everybody to recognize this. People often get wrapped around the axle with a lot of these topics. Cryptography tends to be a little more esoteric. It's something you can't touch. You really have to work with it for a while to figure out public-private key and digital signatures and what goes with what. Just setting up a public-private certificate set on a web server is a challenge because everybody seems to use different words for different things. They tend to use the term certificate and private key interchangeably, which it is not, but they do. So sometimes when you're trying to set these things up, it can be a challenge. And one thing security is, if nothing else, it's very precise with its nomenclature. There are very specific words used for very specific things. And so you do have to be very particular about what you're looking for and how you're getting things answered, because otherwise we'll have to drill down on those and have those done. For Security Plus, so somebody's talking about renewals for Security Plus, you need 50 credits, continuing education units, I guess they call them, and you need 7 before that. Well, now you can just very easily go to this. In fact, for CompTIA Security Plus, if you were to watch 10 of my Security Plus webinars, just brought that up on the screen, you watch 7 of those and you'd have your 7 CEUs. So that'd be very easy to make that happen without taking any exam or anything else. So that's 7 hours of work. You can actually watch up to 10 and send me the continuing education unit requests, and I can do that. And do I have 7 or 10? I haven't been doing Security Plus for very long, though, so there may not be 7 of them there. However, since networking is on the Security Plus exam, and they say that the webinar, the activity pertains to IT webinars relevant to the CompTIA exam objectives in which the certified professional is pursuing, the webinar must map to one or more of the CompTIA Security Plus exam objectives, which means, technically speaking, my Network Plus study groups would also apply to this, since there is a networking. It is mapped to one or more of the CompTIA Security Plus exam objectives. Networking is in there, therefore networking would also apply. So there's plenty to choose from for doing your renewals. Makes useful to be able to do that. And you will the link to get these CEUs, the process to get these continuing education units, is somewhere within the first hour of any of my study groups. In that first hour is an explanation of how to make that happen with specific details, which is sort of part of the CEU process. So that's the way I get to be sure that you actually watched it. That would be the best way to have that happen. Okay, there is another question I wanted to go through, and then we'll see if I can stand, my throat can stand talking through this a little bit more. Let's go through these pieces. Next question. For these, there's a lot here, isn't there? So we talked about CISSP. Thank you for that one. We got a duplicate in that piece. Interestingly enough, people talk a lot about subnetting on the Security Plus exam. And I think that's another one that you do have to watch out for, because you don't want to spend a lot of time going through the subnetting piece of that and not spend the time on the rest of the exam. The networking section and subnetting in general is such a tiny piece of the exam. Don't get wrapped around the axle there. We did a bit of encryption today, so those pieces are good. One of the things you can do from a public key, private key perspective, since this has come up a couple of times, and I'm reading a question here about how can I remember when to use the public key, when to use the private key. I would recommend using it. Download and use something like GPG, which is an open source derivative of the PGP architecture, and create your own public and private key, and then start using it. Take an email, encrypt it, and send it to somebody. In fact, if you want to do it to me, that would be fine. You can take an email and encrypt it. My email address, james@professormesser.com. You'll be able to find my PGP key, my GPG key, out on the public key servers. You can download that, encrypt it with my public key, and send it to me and see if I can read it. And if I did, I will decrypt it with my private key, have a look at it, and then I'll send you something back. I'll even digitally sign it so that you can test the digital signature process, and you can test the decryption process to see how it works. So feel free to send that through and try use it on me. You know, if you have nobody else to send these things to, send it to me and see if I can read through those things. You'll be sending me an email that looks like nonsense, but I should be able to read it if you've taken your keys and also put them on the public key server. So that way I can get your private key and send you an encrypted piece of information back, or check your digital signature if you signed it. It's another important reason to have your keys out on the public key servers. And I'll be glad to have a look at those. On my machine, I'm using Mac OS, so I'm using GPG tools is what I use, but there are a number of GPG front ends for email systems on Windows, on Linux, and other things as well. Comes in handy. For those of you asking, so if we would take the segue real quick into gaming, I do have a little bit of Destiny. I haven't done a lot of Destiny later. I've been working on these A+ exams. The platform I use is an Xbox One. That's what I'm using for those pieces. So for those of you who want to, I don't know that I want to give out my gamer tag. Maybe I should. If you're interested, send me an encrypted message and I'll send you my gamer tag. That's one way to do it. That way we can meet up on Destiny, and you can show me how it's really supposed to be done, or at least have me limp through. I'll be the guy who's always dead in the corner that you always have to revive. That's me for those pieces. So you can have me limp through all of those, drag me along, and try to get me leveled up. Because I can imagine at this point I'm a little behind. I need to gear up quite a bit to make that happen. The CEH certification. A lot of people, I mentioned earlier in the study group that a lot of people think that network security is all about hacking. And the certified ethical hacker, for some reason, is a relatively popular certification from the EC Council. It's probably one of their more popular ones. And quite honestly, the content that's in the certified ethical hacker exam, their detailed breakdown of what you're taught is actually pretty good. But you're not going to use this, practically speaking. You're not a hacker, so you're not going to hack. If you do hack, you're going to jail, so you'll use it a little bit. The content in here is pretty good, but it's just not a practical certification. It doesn't really teach you about network security as much as it teaches you about exploiting. Now, if you're going into doing some work with doing some breakdowns of the way malware operates, and you're going to be creating anti-malware and antivirus software, and you need to decompile and break down a machine code, how these things are working, this might be a good class for you. You can understand how they're using these tools to get into different systems. And I think it's always useful to know about buffer overflows and database injections and what those can do. I don't know how practical it is to actually do them. And certainly very not very useful to do this as a full-time job. There's not many jobs out there where all you do is penetration testing. Not many at all. So it's a very sexy certification. See, the folks at EC Council have had some significant security breaches through the years where people's information has gotten out. So they've not done a very good job at protecting your private information, unfortunately. So I don't think of them as a premier provider of this type of information because it just doesn't apply to what you do in security. But it's so sexy sounding because I could do hacking. I'm a hacker. I learn what the hackers learn, which applies, just doesn't have the broad apply that I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people think you could take this now, be a pen tester, and that's what you'll do for a living. And that's just not actually the case. And LCEH doesn't tell you that. They don't say take this and you can be a pen tester, and everybody taking this and getting the certification is a pen tester. They don't say that. But I think a lot of people think that. It just isn't that way. Most of the time you're sitting in a meeting trying to figure out security policy and how you handle new emerging security threats and how you're going to set up the process for testing patches and deploying them to your servers every month. That's kind of where I see the real security role. And by the way, you also have to set up your firewall, your intrusion prevention. If you do URL filtering, your VPN technologies, how are you going to handle your PKI? Those are real security questions. And those are the ones that are really important. But you can easily go Google EC Council and find out more about them as an organization. I think that might set your perspective properly on those pieces. That might help you a little bit with understanding those pieces. I think that will probably be the clincher for understanding those. I think if I had a chance to take their course for free, I probably would. Sounds interesting. All the stuff is kind of cool in there because I could look at it and do these actual exploits and go through it. And the people teaching them, I understand, are very knowledgeable. So there's no real downside on this. I think the real challenge is you need to understand exactly what this is about and how it would apply. It's like any other certification. The value of the certification is what you plan on doing with it. So if you think right out of the bat you'll be able to take advantage of this knowledge and do something with it, or it's going to get you a job or get you a better job, who am I to say? You should absolutely get this if that's what's going to help you. If it's not, then why take it? That's the decisions you have to make. Is it something I'm interested in? Can I get a job or a better job doing this? Does it help me accomplish whatever goal that is for me to have? Why not? Be out there and be able to use those things. It's very useful. And Metasploit is a good tester. I think in the ethical hacker exam, do they have a breakdown of day by day? I haven't really gone through this in the version 9. I think I looked at it in the version 8 through those pieces. That was certainly in there. What you will learn. So they give you a breakdown of what you will learn. First, you will learn about clip art and people with no faces. And then you'll break down hacking concepts. What is a hacker? Security testing. Well, you'll learn about PCI DSS and HIPAA and Sarbanes-Oxley and FISMA and DMCA. And is that it? Come on, there's more, right? That's it? Oh, there's more. Okay. Fingerprinting and reconnaissance. So they take you through that. Enumeration, scanning networks, system hacking. I bet in the scanning network, they probably use Nmap. They do some Nmap. There's HPing, Nmap. Yep, they do some good stuff there. Session hijacking, since we talked about that today, types of session hijacking. I mean, you're going detailed, really deep into these things. And you're actually using these things. You're actually taking advantage of these things. So like I said, I like the content. It's just about practicality of the certification itself, and will it help you with what you're trying to do? That's up to you. The value of a certification is what other people think of it too. So you have to think of that too. And the real question is, if you go to a group of security professionals, you go to one of these industry meetings and talk about security with other people that are in security roles, you can ask them, what are you looking for? Are you looking for Security Plus? Are you looking for CISSP? Are you looking for Certified Ethical Hacker? What do you need? Because very few organizations need an on-site hacker.
What they need is someone on site who can help manage their firewall and help manage their security process and help manage their VPNs and their certificate authority. That's what they're really challenged with. But there's certainly value in understanding the underlying technology. So that's sort of my no answer to the CEH. It's not something I'm interested in getting myself. Although these days I probably don't need to get a certification because my boss doesn't care about those because that's Mrs. Professor Messer. She cares. She cares if I'm doing this. Are you making videos? Have you posted a video yet? Have you edited things? Are they on YouTube? We have meetings all the time. Where are we with doing these things? That's what she's concerned about. So that's the one I use. I love Metasploit. If you get to be very knowledgeable with Metasploit, you can do some real interesting things with that. And I think knowing how to use these scanners and use these Metasploit and other technologies that you would learn in something like a certified ethical hacker can help your organization be more secure. You just have to be very, very careful and very particular. It's like owning a firearm. You have to be responsible at how you use that firearm. You have to be very responsible at how you use these tools. I've told this story before. I had worked in a call center, and one day our phone switch went down. Now, for those of you familiar with call centers and familiar with phone switches, you can't make phone calls if the phone switch doesn't work. So effectively, the PBX at the time completely died. It went down. It rebooted. We started doing analysis of the logs, looking at what we saw on the network, and tracked it back to somebody who was running a scan, in this case, a very invasive scan using at the time, a well-known tool that was similar to a Metasploit or an Nmap. That was looking for known vulnerabilities. It was doing not just a vulnerability scan, it was doing an exploit test and trying to exploit known vulnerabilities. And unfortunately, this phone switch, this was not a very well-developed security infrastructure on this phone switch, couldn't handle it, and it rebooted the phone switch. And we ended up, that person who did that was a contractor who said he was just poking around. He certainly should not be. We certainly didn't believe him. And, we put the light on him and said, what are you doing? What were you trying to do? Where did you go? He had deleted things from his computer. We undeleted them. We pulled out the registry. We were able to find everything that happened, and we walked him out of the building, and he was no longer welcome at our organization. Nor was the company that we got that person from. So it really hurt that particular organization. So you have to be incredibly careful with these tools and be very responsible with what you're doing. Everyone has to understand what you're doing. There has to be a whole set of tests so that you don't affect production. Very, very important. Yeah, PBX is pretty legacy. Most everything is voice over IP these days. At the time, it was a PBX. I'm an old guy. All right. That's what it is. But that's what happened. You think back, this was a number of years ago. It was more than 10 years ago. It was probably about 10. Oh, let's see. It was 15 years ago. Thanks. Thank you, A. Wood, in the chat room, very much for mentioning that. All right. It's really not a big deal. We're good. I'm fine with it. I'm just kidding you. There's so much more we can talk about, but my voice won't let me. And I have more questions that we can go through, and I have many more that we're going to go through next month. So make sure you check in with me next month, and we will absolutely go through more of those. But for this time, I think we've come to the end of what I'm able to do from a study group perspective. Remember that we do have another study group set up for December the 16th. Don't miss that one. There's so much more that we're going to talk about and go through. And it'll be it'll be the end of the year study group. Who knows what we'll have going on with that. I want to thank everybody for attending the study group today. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for answering questions. Thanks for asking the questions. See you next month on the Security Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.